Welcome to the Wake Church Podcast. The purpose of this podcast is to help equip you to become a disciple maker where you live, learn, work, and play. Make sure to subscribe, follow, and leave a review. We hope you enjoy today's episode.
Hey, welcome to the Wake Church Podcast. Thank you guys so much for tuning in this morning or evening or afternoon, whatever part of the day that you're catching us at. But this is an episode of Beyond the Message, where we dive into your questions, your thoughts on last week's message. And we're in the middle of a series titled Relationships in a Broken World. And I've been pretty excited about this entire series, mainly because we get to answer questions and thoughts and concerns that a lot of our people are having, especially as they're entering into relationships, engagement stage, or marriages that are dealing with difficult times. And so it's been exciting for me to be able to dive into this. We typically journey through books of the Bible or do our best to sit there and go verse by verse, depending on the context of the sermon series. But for moments like this, we get to press pause and address something from a pastoral issue or concern. And so we've been enjoying it, and we hope you guys have too. And last week, what was the title of my message?
Title was
you're
devoted.
No,
what is it?
How to date. Come on, man. I put you on the spot.
But it was about singleness. It was about devotion.
No. That was last week.
Oh, you're talking about this past Sunday.
Yeah, this past Sunday.
Yeah. This past Sunday is how to date.
How to date. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you were talking about last week. I was like, what?
No. Sorry for the confusion. But we wanted to dive into some questions, and so yeah, let's dive in.
Was there anything you wanted to go in deeper, or you just want to go straight into the questions?
We can go straight into the questions, and then I'll try to hit on some more. I had a lot of content from this past Sunday, and I didn't even get to move through all of it. So I have a lot more to say, but maybe I'll save it for another series.
All right. So first question is this. We'll start with this one. So if dating isn't found in the Bible, should dating even be a thing? Is dating even biblical, or is it a man-made thing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. This is one of the points that I actually love the most in my study preparing for this message, because I think it was honestly, and Ben Stewart can probably credit this to somebody else, unless this is his research. But I found that to be the most interesting piece of his book, where he talks about autonomy, and so I'll address. The first thing, yes. Is dating a man-made thing? Yes. I mean, culturally speaking, that is something that got introduced into the picture. And even if we go back into just historic times, right, there was less of a dating stage and more of a selection stage in regards to, specifically for the woman, in regards to a guy for the woman, or
right, it was like arranged marriages.
Yeah, arranged marriages. And so culturally, yes, dating has hit the scene. Now, from a biblical standpoint, there's been words that have been thrown around like courtship, words that are saying, hey, this dating phase is very specific. And so I think the church has tried to really grab a hold of the dating phase as much as they possibly can. But the point of bringing that up in the message was that the dating phase is really an identity issue. And what I meant by that in the message was saying, if we don't go into that dating stage with an understanding of who we are in Christ, then that's where things get incredibly dramatic. That's where things typically go wrong, because the dating stage ends up extending far beyond the period that it's meant to be extended. And so my main point from Sunday was saying, hey, the dating is a status to move through.
It's a process.
Right. It's a status to move through, a status not to stay in, but it's a process to move through. And so that's important, because what's happening right now in the complexities of dating is that period has grown out significantly
to
years. And then what begins to happen is because it goes so long, then that's where we talked about bringing responsibilities, bringing commitments from the marriage side of things into the dating stage, and that just shouldn't happen. And so because it's meant to be a little bit more condensed, not saying, you ask her out one date and get married the next, but that was the purpose. So that was the last part of that question. What was the first part of that question?
Should dating even be a thing?
Should dating? Yeah, it does. It needs to be a thing. Because either way, whether or not it's dating or arranged marriage, there's still an evaluation period. And that's ultimately what you're looking for in a spouse. You're doing your best to evaluate them. You're doing your best to figure out their passion points. You're doing your best to figure out what their main pursuit in life is, their goals, really what makes them tick. You're looking for red flags. You're looking for character flaws. All of these things are things that are happening in the dating phase of things. So yeah, dating should be there, in my opinion. Whatever you want to call it, it should be there. It's needed. It's just a matter of I would say re-identifying what that dating period is for. Because most of the time, people just go into it with like, I finally have a boyfriend or I finally have a girlfriend. And it's like they want to put a permanent address in the dating stage where it's not needing to have a permanent address. It needs to be something that they move through. So, yeah, so I think absolutely dating should be there for sure.
Yeah, okay. So that leads into the second question, which I would say I was wanting clarity as well myself. But so the question is this. So you said that women shouldn't place commitments on men during the dating stage. So how do I expect my husband to suddenly switch into committed husband mode just because we got married? Now, so that's the question.
Yeah.
But so in the sermon, you talked about how, even just now, you talked about how like the commitments beforehand, right? Whenever it's not marriage, but in what it seemed like is that more the emphasis was on the sex before marriage or the benefits of marriage, meaning sex. Like that, that's what it seemed like. But what it also looked like was that, and where I want clarity, even for me, is in the dating stage, it's like, is there, if I don't, like, let's say a girl comes to me and says, hey, like, I'm starting to date this guy. And I'm like, okay. And then she's like, well, you know, he never hangs out with me. He doesn't do this. Like, he doesn't, you mentioned family stuff, right? He doesn't want to go to my family Thanksgiving. I'm trying to invite him. I want him to get to know my family. And so it's like, to me, it's like, if I tell this girl, if he isn't willing to sacrifice, if he isn't willing to give up things, if he isn't willing to do certain things in even the dating stage, right? It's like, where would that magically happen in the marriage stage, right? Or is it like, or are you saying like it happens in the engagement stage where then he starts to sacrifice, right? Because as I've always pushed people, is like, hey, if this guy isn't even able to say, hey, I'm not going to go play basketball with the boys because I want to spend time with you because you work all the time and this is a little time we have. But he's like, hey, I got to hang out with the boys. Then it's like, okay, well, hold up. Like maybe his priority isn't you. And maybe that is an indicator saying, hey, he's not ready for commitment because he's choosing basketball again and again and again. Every now and then, sure, it's like, hey, we're not married, right? There has to be boundaries, but right? But what is that point where commitment is needed, expected, looks like in a dating or just in a relationship period?
Yeah, no, that's a good clarifying question. So I would say first and foremost, what I was trying to allude to was the drama. So, and I'll start there and then I'll circle back to where you're at. So what oftentimes happens in the complexities of dating is that drama arises because there are certain expectations that are expected from the girl or expected from the guy that aren't being met in the dating relationship that causes all of the emotions to spike, all of the her going to talk to her girlfriends and be like, oh my God, I can't believe he did this. And him going to talk to, I can't believe she's wanting me to do this. And so there's all of these like nuances and essentially made up dating rules that begin to apply in the dating relationship that ultimately just bring complexities into it when ultimately there needs to be still evaluation and you need that to be drama free. And so when you pull in certain expectations like that in the dating stage, that's where drama arises. So back to the point of evaluation then, if he's not willing to give up certain things, yes, I would say, well, hey, that's you evaluating him, but don't sit there and allow there to be a rift in the relationship because you're pouring gasoline on a fire because he's not meeting expectations that you've secretly set. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So there is a tension
Oh, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, I was going to say there is a tension there because you're ultimately still wanting to evaluate. If the guy really likes you, he's going to want to spend time with you. However, there is some pushback, and I'll get to the engagement piece. There is some pushback because, for instance, I'll go back to the example that Ben utilizes in his book. He talks about a summer after he met his wife, Donna. They really liked each other, but he wanted to fully evaluate where the relationship was. And I think that this is, not saying this is a poor thing on Ben's part by any means. This is definitely more of the extreme side of things. They spent an entire summer away from each other. They didn't call each other. They wrote letters to each other, literally the entire summer. He did that on an intentional side because he needed to evaluate his heart. He really liked her. He was all for her. The chemistry was there, but he was really wanting to press pause and make sure that this is exactly what God had for them. And what he was doing was very good, in my opinion. He was ultimately seeing if the relationship would organically come back together. He was looking, does his heart still long to talk to her after they're writing letters? And that's what he found out. He found out after the summer apart that they wanted to see each other more. He wanted to hear more from her and see her letters come in the mail for him. And he talks about him going through an extreme route in the middle of the night just to go get one of the letters so that he can hear from her, right? So there was a longing in his heart to be with her, and he realized this really is the person that I want to be with. So when they got back from that summer, their relationship moved very quickly.
Right.
He didn't waste any time. I'm pretty positive they had like I'm not going to say that out loud because I want to say 3-month engagement, but I could be completely wrong on that. Sorry, Ben, if you ever listen to this, check that in the book. But their dating relationship increased immediately after that because they understood where they were at. They understood that they wanted to be together, and they ultimately understood that God was bringing them back together. So he created space in order for him to evaluate appropriately. And that seems completely counterproductive to the dating stage right now, which is like, no, you need to spend all your time together to see if you like each other. But what begins to happen, to his point, is that even though you may not be doing anything physically, you're still in that euphoria stage where all of the emotions are heightened and you're really enjoying the time with this person, which is good indicators, but sometimes that can just cloud the evaluation process. So that was his goal. Now he got to the engagement stage, which is, to your point, the engagement stage, like, because the way that he explains it feels oftentimes a little bit different in some ways. Because the dating stage is when the family really kicks in, where the finances really kick in. Because at that point, he's saying, hey, you're committing to this person. Like, the engagement isn't the evaluation stage. If we go into the engagement stage as this is still evaluation, then we need to back up. And so he's saying do really strong evaluation. And then that way, when you get to the engagement stage, you're focused on building the marriage, focused on the family pieces, the finances, and ultimately the future that you're building together because you've done really well evaluation in the dating stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think part of like the needed clarity would probably be like, I think there, and I don't know if it is in your mind, but what it seems like is that there's a dating stage, which is more evaluation.
Correct.
But then there is also, what it seems like you're saying, there is a courtship stage where like things get a little more serious. And that's where maybe the commitments are allowed to come in, not necessarily hey, let's talk about finances. Like Jamie and I, when we started.
Well, let me clarify that question real quick. Yeah. I didn't mean to cut you off, but the motivation for a girl saying he doesn't want to spend time with me is the red flag. It's not even like, do I need to have a conversation for him to want to spend time with me? Does that make sense?
So you're saying red flag for the guy or for the girl?
Red flag for the girl.
Got it.
Like if it's like, I don't want to give up any time to spend time with you, there's a red flag. That was his point about the letters. He's like, I longed to still be with her. So you're saying for the girl, if she's like, hey, he's not wanting to spend time with me, it's like, hey, maybe that's an indicator.
Saying not to go with that guy.
Correct.
Got it.
That's what I'm saying. So that's like,
got it. Yeah.
But where it gets wrong is when she takes those expectations and then forces it on the relationship. Does that make sense?
So you're saying there needs to be a point of talking about it, the clarity that you were saying?
So like, for instance, in the evaluation stage, you're evaluating what he's doing.
Right.
You're evaluating what he loves.
Wait. So real quick, hold on.
Yes.
So let me ask. So how much? In that way, I think it'd be more beneficial to do more evaluation before the dating even ever happens.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right. I mean, it's like, who is this guy? What's his character? What's his integrity? What do people say about him?
Yeah.
Like, is he even? Because to me, it's like before I even started dating Jamie, I said the next girl I date, not like go on dates with. Like the next girl I date, I want to marry.
Sure. Yeah.
So for me, like it was a year and a half of
just
evaluation.
Asking. Yeah. You're asking. You're looking. You're searching.
We got to know each other. We saw each other. I got to know more about her in that season.
In community.
Correct. Yeah. In Christian community. And so for us, it was like, as soon as we both, had the chance, we were wanting to date each other. And then from there, it was like, because beforehand, and I think maybe it's, I don't know if I'm a, what's the term, like anomaly, but I said, hey, the next girl I want to date is the girl I'm going to marry. Like, I want to make sure, I don't want to waste time.
Right.
I want to make sure whoever this girl is that I even give the opportunity that I start dating, right, is the girl that is worth marrying, right? Yeah. Can I see her as one who can, mother children one day, that can teach them, good, solid theological truths, that her identity is first found in Christ, like you were saying, and not in me or my ability. Correct. Because I'll never complete Jamie.
All you're doing right there is saying all the things that you were evaluating. And the second point I would point out to that is that you were ready for commitment. Does that make sense? Yeah. You as the guy were ready. Right. And what happens in the dating phase is that girls start picking up guys who aren't ready for commitments. And then they start forcing them into commitments. Does that make sense?
Right. So
that's where the drama begins to spike up.
So the issue is the girl needs to first see if a guy's even able to commit. Right. Yeah. Before you start dating. Right. Like to me, like that would be like the better solution is, hey, just figure out who the guy that you're even thinking about dating is before you actually even put, like, as people say, a label on it. Right.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, I agree. And it's both sides. The guy should be evaluating girls and the girl should be evaluating the guys. And you're looking for all those characteristics in Christian community. Right. The thing is that what's different from you and I and our relationships, when for Cody and I had that community to be rooted in. When I talk with young adults today, they're like, that community doesn't seem to exist. Right. Part of it could be because they keep uprooting themselves out of community and looking for that community. So you're just jumping from fish bowl to fish bowl to fish bowl.
Which therein lies a deeper problem you have a wrong perspective.
Yeah, you need to stay rooted in community and on pursuit, grounded in the local church. But then the problem becomes you have technology. And so technology pushes you into the dating phase, it seems like much quicker. Or there is the really unclear stage of we're just quote unquote talking. Got it. Like a guy slides into the DMs and starts a conversation up, but he's unclear in his motive. To me, that's an immediate red flag when I'm saying, well, you need to lead with clarity. If you want to date healthily, you need to figure out what the guy's intention is. Is he just wanting to slide into your DMs for other reasons, or is he serious about dating? And if he's serious about dating, then the emphasis on the guy, again, pushing a lot of emphasis on the guys, is that they need to lead with integrity and intentionality, saying, hey, I intend to date you, or I think you're really cute. Would you like to go out on a date? Like,
So at that point, that's when the guy should be, what's the term? Should be showing, like being sacrificial, showing that integrity, showing that hey, girl, I like you. You're important. I'm going to make you a priority. Let me show you that I see you as important.
Yes, because you do want the longing to be together, to be there. You don't want it not to be there. Right. But it shouldn't be. This is probably, if I can utilize this example as just a case study, like if somebody's in a unhealthy dating relationship and they feel like, oh man, this dude's priorities are completely out of line. Mm-hmm. And what happens is the girl is so committed to trying to make it sounds like I'm being harsh on the girls. I'm not being harsh on the girls. But oftentimes those expectations come from the girls. Right. And the guy should be he should not, I'll say this to back up all the ladies listening, the guy shouldn't be in a relationship, period, if he's not serious about moving forward through the process.
If he's not setting the tone,
correct,
the standard.
Correct.
Yeah.
And so if those things aren't happening and you have a girl who is like, man, I want a guy that I'm serious about, and the guy isn't showing any signs of seriousness, what I'm saying not to do is I'm not saying, oh, I need to just be...
I need to set some hard boundaries on a guy who's immature.
Exactly.
And that's where the drama
starts. Because I'm like, hey, I really need you to be at my family thing. And the guy's like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
Well, no, the guy's not ready for commitment. So you need to get out of the relationship.
Absolutely.
That's what I meant by that.
No, that's huge. That's big clarity.
Yeah.
For me, that's very clarifying.
Yeah. So that's the piece that is in that evaluation stage.
Right.
But ultimately, the guy needs to get out of the relationship. Right. And the girl needs to get out,
right. So,
because that will set unhealthy rhythms and boundaries.
Inch here, mile down the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, because I think, like you were saying, I think that there is evaluation beforehand, which is very important, right? It's like buying a house. Like you don't want to just, guess, oh yeah, I think the roof's good. Hey, I think the walls are right. But then when you... maybe that's a bad analogy. Once you're in the house, you're kind of, but you have, no. So you're in the house, you look at it, right? But then you put the earnest money down,
correct,
right? Then you have 30 days to see, is this, now don't do 30-day dating, right? It's not what we're saying.
But your inspection becomes more,
then you have a deeper look, right? Where it's like, you get to know this person. And I think what's important is that most people are so quick, as you would say, right, to jump to the physicality to see if there's even more spark. It's like, hey, he checks off these, so I'm gonna let him date me, right? Or I'm gonna try to date her, right? She checks off these, but then it's like, okay, what about these physical boxes, right? That I need them to check off. It's like, let's see how they are in bed, right? Mm-hmm. Let's see if he's any good. Let's see if she's any good, right? Mm-hmm. But then I think at that point, those people are missing the complete. Are missing the complete point of the dating, which is, hey, see if he really loves Jesus, right? See if she really loves Jesus.
If you, sorry, I kind of like the home analogy. It works.
It
works. But you're like, I'm single, and that's the point of me trying. I'm trying to get a guy so I can get a house. But like, there's a couple different stages. There's the stage where the girl or the guy is just scrubbing through HAR or Zillow app to figure out what house to buy.
Right.
And I would say that's you living in biblical rooted community, constantly evaluating the people, quote unquote, on the market, right? You're looking. And then let's say you find a house that you actually like. You click on the house, you figure out, does this actually work? Does this not?
Look around.
You're being intentional. And then once you move to an earnest money stage, I would say, that's like the dating stage. You're saying, hey, I want to have some commitment here.
Right.
I'm ready to commit. I have the finances to purchase, quote unquote, house. I'm ready to commit. And then you do a deeper inspection. The inspector comes in and he gives you a list of things that are like, hey, these things are, what's wrong with the house.
Right.
Now, this is incredibly important.
Oh, this is good.
This part is where you still have the ability to back out of the contract. A 30-day closing period or 90-day feasibility period. It's a contract period. You have the ability to fall, quote unquote, out of the contract, right? But if you have fallen so in love and not guarded your heart, oftentimes a real estate agent will tell you this: don't fall in love with the house. They just tell you don't fall in love with it, because you have to do the deeper work. So if you've already allowed your heart to be so committed to this dude or this girl, then whenever you get the inspection back, you don't care. You don't pay attention to the inspection because you're like, ultimately, I want to make this work.
Right.
And then you get into the house, and every homeowner knows this. It is 100% different when you live in the house. Right. You notice things that you did not notice when you were just
like
touring
my AC unit.
Like your AC unit. Yeah. My AC unit went out, 2 weeks after I bought the house. And then my downstairs unit went out. And then you notice the little cracks of the doors, or you notice how something is slightly off, because you don't view that in the contract period.
Right.
You just kind of bypass it because you want the house. But again, you can flip the analogy again, and that's ultimately what marriage is.
Right.
Once you get into it, there's nuances that you didn't realize about the person. There are things you didn't realize about the person, but you're committed to the person.
Right. Because I think that goes back to, it's like, there are, And I think that's where community and like godly counsel comes in, right? Because there are things that, right, even in premarital, right, where people come to us. I mean, I wish there was premarital. I think that would really benefit a lot of people. But there are things that come up, right, that you have to talk about and deal with and help counsel people through, whether it's a past or skeletons in the closet or just whatever it is, right? Or debt comes out there. Like, hey, by the way, I got $20,000 worth of debt and you're in the engagement, right? But I think that also in that stage, like you said, right, where it's that it is marriage, right? Where it's like, hey, I see your flaws, right?
Ultimately, I'm committed.
I see your cracks. I see all this and I'm committed. And that's why I'm giving you a ring, right? Because I think, to me, it's like if you're getting into the engagement stage and you haven't done the deep, dirty work of figuring out who this person is, right? Like whether you take the year-round approach and you see this person a year-round or whatever it is, right? You see them with their family, you see them at work, like whatever your, vetting process is, right? Is that I think you need to do that all before the engagement, right? Because the engagement is the point where it's like, hey, no, the point is we've done this, right? We've done the vetting. We're in it now. Help us, right? Help us to have a strong foundation in our marriage, right? But yeah, because I think that's the point, right? It's like, hey, I see your flaws. It's Christianity, right? Christ saw us in our weakness while we were enemies and died for us, right? So same thing is you're going to see flaws. You're going to see things. But it's almost one of those where it's like,
There are certain flaws though that are disclaimers.
No. I would say yes. Like, hold on. Let me say it and then let me. So there are things that you're like, hey, I will live with this, right? But some of those things, wisdom would tell you are not worth living with because it may show, hey, maybe this guy or girl isn't even saved.
Yeah, well,
right?
that's the exact point, right?
Yeah.
So if you get the inspector's report back and you realize, oh, the foundation is completely shoddy,
right?
And you're going to have to do a whole lot of work to make this happen, and it's going to cost you $50,000 to replace the foundation.
Right.
Well, then wisdom would say that's not a good house to buy.
Good house, no.
And that's the same thing with dating. It's like, hey, again, going back to the unequally yoked analogy, I love that picture of it's supposed to be the oxes charging the field to plow it side by side. But the analogy of if you put a goat next to an ox, it's just not going to work.
Yeah, go in circles.
And that's exactly what happens in the dating stage. I see it happen time and time again where it's like, no, I can fix this person up. I think I can make this work, and it just causes these cycles and circles that just go back and forth, and ultimately you're not progressing any.
Right. You could take the farm analogy even further and say, like, right, they're plowing the field, right, because they want to harvest, right? Our marriage is supposed to be this thing where other young couples are supposed to benefit from your marriage. Absolutely. But if you're running in circles, there's no harvest, right? There's no fruit. There's nothing there for somebody else to share. If anything, it just looks like a bunch of mud and it looks real messy.
Yeah. So I think it was a good question to clarify because I did want to make sure that was abundantly clear. Right. Now, the other part that goes to the second question, and this will probably be a longer episode because we're talking about dating, but I'm praying the listeners are still with us, is that when the dating phase begins to take the responsibilities of marriage and you overlay that in the dating phase, then you start creeping into wanting the benefits of marriage.
So responsibilities, what do you mean?
Responsibilities like the hard responsibilities.
So like finances?
The finances, the family, the true dying to the self and the true sacrifices. What begins to happen is you overlay those in the dating phase and then you start longing for the benefits of it. Or another way of putting it is you start having the benefits. This is typically where most young couples are at. You start having the benefits of marriage without the responsibility of marriage. Okay, that's important to clarify, right? Meaning the benefits of, we get to sleep together, we get to do life together, we get to do all of these things together. Yeah, all of this in the dating stage. Because I'm experiencing the benefits of marriage in dating. And when you do that, you remove the tension that pushes you through the dating phase.
Marriage.
Correct.
Right.
And that's why what I was saying before is that dating in America has become an elongated process because of that.
Because the benefits are already there.
Correct.
Like, why do we need to get married?
Correct.
Right.
Why do we need to get married? All of these things are already happening now. We can live together. I got my apartment. You can come over to my place. We can save money. All of those things, those are benefits of marriage. And we're taking them and we're putting them into the dating stage. And then it's causing us to have very dramatic and hurtful dating relationships and breakups because you're tying yourself to this person. But you're saying, I don't want the responsibilities of marriage.
I don't want the weight.
And even if your excuse is, hey, there's nobody in my family that's ever had a healthy marriage, or I've never seen marriage work out well, you're living in a marriage without the rings.
Right.
Which one's better? None of them. Like they're both hurtful, and they both end in destruction in that. So that's why I tell guys, I'm like, look, if you've identified the person, and you've done strong evaluation, and you begin to date her, and you know that she is the one, then put a ring on it and get married.
Right.
And Paul tells us, he's like, hey, listen, it's not good that you burn with passion.
Right.
He's very clear with that. Like, I get, like, hey, I want to make it. Then shorten the engagement.
Right.
I'm not going to be, I know there's like pushback on like short engagements or pushback on like short dating phase. But
if you can't hold it in your pants, right, then you need to make that engagement as short as possible.
Yeah. And now please hear me again. The red flag to that is, if all you're thinking about is the physical aspects of it, and you're like, then you're missing the point.
Right.
But if you've done your due diligence, if you've done solid evaluation, if you long to be with this person, if you're ready to lock arms and run the rest of your life together with this person, then get married.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in a position Don't put yourself in a position where you're ultimately gonna trip up and mess up. Just go ahead and get married. And so that's another part. And then another piece I would speak to this is that I've also noticed that the dating phase stretches out because they're taking forever to actually build the life together. Like I don't know, this wasn't necessarily in his book, but it's something that I've personally picked up on, is that there is a tension to want to have everything ready to go for the marriage. In the engagement stage. And so it's like, we have to make sure we have the house, we have to make sure we have this and that, and all of these pieces have to be perfectly aligned so that we can get married. And again, I'll push on that a little bit. Is it wise to do that? Yes. Because ultimately the engagement stage is meant for unification. It's meant to say, hey, we're bringing our families together, we're bringing our future together, and we're bringing our finances together. Does it have to be picture perfect in that stage? No. And this is often what drags the process out even longer, is that it's like, okay, well, where are we going to live? Well, we're going to do this. And sometimes I'm like, look, some of those pieces are going to fall into place after the marriage. Right. Those are the things that you're going to work on. You're asking to build the marriage in the engagement. And it's like, no, just move through the engagement and then start building the marriage. So those two pieces are what I've noticed that have caused relationships to drag out way more than they should. And then I can throw a third one in there, and the third one would be speaking to the online dating side of things, right? I said, statistically speaking, women still long to be asked out face to face. Yet we know, culturally speaking, that that's not the case. All social media platforms are still being utilized
text
message. Like, all of those things are still being utilized to ask people out on dates. And maybe you do meet somebody online. And I made that point. There's people at Wake who've met online, and it's great. They have a healthy relationship. I would just say the evaluation stage probably needs to be a little bit longer if you've met somebody online, because you need to give yourself time to figure out what their community is, who they are, and what that looks like. So that would be my one. Is it bad to meet somebody online? No. Is it wrong to meet somebody who slides into your DMs? No, but I would say be very careful. What is his intentions? Is it, I just want some pics, or I want to put a ring on it? Like, those are completely two different things. So be careful about that. But if he's like, hey, I want to put a ring on this, then engage into a very careful evaluation stage of him, and figure out where they're at, what their community is, because those are things that you overlook whenever you're just doing that online. So Yeah, I mean, there's a lot there. I don't know if that answers that full question, but I think it does.
I think it brought, I think so. All right, last question. And you kind of mentioned this a little bit, but I don't know if this would be necessarily like where this would be a red flag or just maybe just clarity on it. But it says, you said that we don't just marry our spouse, but the family. Should someone be disqualified because of their family? Doesn't Scripture say, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and hold fast to his wife, and two shall become one flesh?
Yeah, so the clarifying part to this is that, yes, that's what Scripture says, and that's talking about the unification of a man and a woman coming together, right? So, yes, but to the point of, can the family disqualify? It's not a disqualifying factor. It is a very strong factor to consider.
Got it.
Okay, so...
so if like the girl's family's crazy or the guy's family's crazy, it shouldn't be like, it's just something, hey, you need to know. It's the crazy neighbor next to the new house you're about to buy.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you need to know that that's what you're signing up for.
Right.
You need to understand the nuances that causes in the relationship. You need to understand that those are going to be things that you have to navigate through together. And ultimately still this is my call for the marriage, is that if you're in the family that is absolutely crazy, Christ has still called you to be godly and love your spouse well enough, but also love your family well.
Right.
If you become the spouse that doesn't move out to your family, then you're missing a really key component of mission in your marriage. And so, you're going to have to put boundaries up, and yes, you're going to have to guard each other from said crazy family. However, that doesn't mean that you wall off and shell off that family completely, because that's still your family.
Yeah, missional mindset.
Yeah, missional mindset with the family. But when I say that family is a major indicator, I mean that from the standpoint of, you need to have serious conversations about that. And nuances will arise in the marriage with that. Most of the time, and this is one of the things, again, I utilize the laser tag analogy in the message about how when you go play laser tag, premarital counseling is like the instructional video that you watch before you get into the game. And then you get in the game, you're like, hey, how do I load my gun? You're like, I don't know. And you're like, I didn't pay attention because you were too excited. And so that's what premarital always feels like. Right. And whenever we sit back down with couples, most of the things that pop up are those issues. It's the family, it's the finances, or it's the future piece, the vision. And the family aspect is important to navigate well together and understand, hey, there's some boundaries that you need to make. So I will say this, though. Once you get into the marriage, to that scripture, yes, your responsibility is to your wife. And your responsibility is to your husband. That means you are on the same team. That means you're not fighting against each other.
Right.
And what oftentimes happens is that the allegiance or the loyalty of the daughter or the son will oftentimes struggle to default back to the family, which is what causes the headaches.
What do you mean default back?
So default back in the sense that, hey, this is my mom, or hey, this is my dad, and they're asking me to do this. And so I'm defaulting back to the relationship that I once was, which was with my father and my mother.
Right. But then shows your new wife or husband that they're not most important.
Correct.
Got it.
And so there is a dangerous part in that. Like, the son shouldn't be always worrying about the mother's needs over the wife's needs.
Absolutely.
I have to worry about my wife's needs over the mother's needs.
Yep.
And there's tension in that. There's tension for the wife, maybe with a dad or a mom, like the same thing, like your husband's now. And so those pieces have to first and foremost be strong together so that you can navigate the family piece as well.
Because no matter how close knit you were or are, right, it's like you've made this commitment to your spouse.
Correct.
Saying, hey, you're number one
Correct.
in my life. I'm going to defend you. I'm going to be there for you. Right. And it does get messy in family stuff. But and
that piece is so, and that's hard to navigate. There's always
case by case.
It is 100% case by case. And so just utilize godly wisdom when you're trying to navigate those things. Do you have to be a jerk to your mom or to your dad because you're trying to defend your spouse? No, because you're not operating out of biblical wisdom in that. But you do need to make sure that you're setting boundaries and that they're prepared for that ultimately. And so I firmly believe, though, that there is a time period where that has to be abundantly clear. But I believe in reintegrating back into the family. Like, once the couple
it's kind of established.
Yeah, once the couple is established, the rhythms that work well for them, I think I could probably make a biblical case for it, but I see it to be most healthy when the husband and wife reintegrate back into the full family picture. Yeah. There's health for the couple, and typically that happens around kids because you're like mom, dad, that you're like, hey, peace out. You're like, hey, mom, dad, please come back and watch the kids.
You should babysit, right?
And that's what happens.
Right, because this is also good for those, let's say, we have those listening whose kids are married, getting married, right? It's like, hey, like,
feel the tension of that. Of like, if you're the grandparents in the picture. I know I had a difficult conversation with my wife, my mom early on, not my wife, my mom early on, as we were working to navigate those boundaries. Right. And I was like, hey, I promise you, like, you're going to be in Ellie and Ezra's. Well, this is just when we were first having Ellie. I promise you, you're going to be in Ellie's life. There's no need to be concerned here. Yeah. And that's a way to just navigate walking in love to my mom, and then also navigating and walking in love to my wife. And now, I mean, most of y'all know my parents. I mean, Ray and Poppy are, they're so much involved in my kid's life. Absolutely. And I wouldn't want it any other way. Yeah. And I think that's where the healthy rhythm comes back into play. So eventually it reintegrates. So if you're the couple that just gets married and you're like, hey, forget them, it's us and nobody else. Right. You're gonna burn a bridge that is gonna bite you later if you have kids, and you're gonna be like, hey, so do you want to come back and watch the kid? You know what I mean? Like, so be cautious with that. And maybe it's distance, there's a bunch of nuances with that, but that's what I would say to that. So
it's good. No, I think an important thing is with your family that you marry into, right? It's like, one, if you marry into this family, you're probably the golden child, a part of that family. Sure. Right? Hopefully. Right? There have been many instances where it's not the case, where there is even like animosity before the wedding.
No, absolutely. Sometimes the wedding stage, definitely, the engagement stage definitely spikes all that. So,
yeah. But I would say, right, like the point really is just to love them the way that Christ loved the church, right? But this family, right? Yeah. But also it's like you have to, it goes back to identity, right? Mm-hmm. Full circle is you were an enemy of God, right? You were doing everything wrong. God had every right to be angry, or he was angry with us. He was mad with us, right? We deserved punishment. We deserved hell, right? But instead, what did we get? We got love. We got Jesus. We got everlasting life, right? The same way is like, okay, this debt you've been forgiven of, how much more should you forgive this family that you're marrying into that isn't easy to deal with, that is difficult, that you don't really want to see, but yet it's like, hey, when's the last time you prayed for them? When's the last time you asked God to save them, right? It's like, so yes, I know we kind of got into even marriage stuff, but this is good stuff.
No, for sure. But that's those are things that you're evaluating, period, in the dating stage. So, the couple of points that I had on Sunday, to bring clarity to this again. So let's just say you're in the dating stage and you're asking the question, man, how do I know? Like, how do I know that this is the right person? Right. And one of the clarifying things that is important for all relationships to evaluate is, can you make it through conflict? Because oftentimes when the drama arises and conflict arises, a lot of times couples just, they go their opposite ways, or they realize, man, this really isn't worth fighting for. Yeah. But if you find somebody that you can overcome conflict and come to a point where you're communicating well enough that you want to make it through this, and you realize there's fight in both of y'all to say, no, we want this to work, then that's a good indicator that you have somebody that you're ready to spend the rest of your life with. Right. The other thing I said was communication. That's the same piece. But what I mean by this is not only from conflict resolution, but y'all's communication is really, really good. It was funny. My wife and I just watched Crazy Stupid Love on Netflix because they just dropped it. Yeah, it's one of our, I shouldn't say one of our favorites, because if a listener is like, but there's a scene that I wish I would have remembered, and it's kind of a risky scene to say on the pulpit, but I'll say it here in the podcast. It's the scene where Emma Stone, I was about to say Emma Watson. Emma Stone walks in, and there's Ryan Gosling in all of his glory.
At the bar,
right? Okay. She kisses him. and they go back to his place, right? And this scene begins to unravel, and you can fast forward the scene, but there comes a point where they stopped the physicality, and then they just ended up talking all night long.
She's awkward.
Yeah, because she's awkward and she's hilarious, right? And the physical part stopped, and then they talked all night. In that moment, what happened? They moved past the chemistry and they moved to communication.
Right.
Do you have somebody that you can communicate to?
Do you talk? Yeah.
Do you enjoy the company? Do they make you laugh? Like, do you enjoy those moments of just conversation with them? If you do, that's a good indicator that you have somebody that you want to spend the rest of your life with. And then the last one was confession. Can you survive a moment of confession? Can you survive them expressing deep-rooted sin to the other person, saying like, this is something that I deal with, I struggle with. Is this something that is causing you to run the opposite way? Or is this something that, hey, I understand and you show grace and love and mercy to? So those three things are like great indicators to say, hey, this is how you know that you know. Yeah. Like, how do you know? That's how. And if you find that person, then put a ring on it and make the commitment and ultimately step into the engagement stage. So a lot there, man. There's a lot in the dating pieces. And I honestly, I'll wrap this up. I honestly want to know if I feel like out of all the subjects, if our listeners have more questions, it would be on this topic. Yeah. So please let us know. Either drop a question in the comments below. Make sure to like and subscribe, of course, to this. That we greatly appreciate that. But send us in your questions. Just simply send an email to podcast@wakechurch.com, podcast@wakechurch.com with your questions, and we'd love to be able to answer them. We might do a part 2 of the dating side of things since it was a 4-week series. I really wanted it to be like a 6-week series, but you could tell by all the content that I had from Sunday that I wanted it to be longer. But maybe we'll do another episode specifically on dating alone. But that's got to be from you guys. So if y'all demand it, then we'll make it happen. So let us know. But as always,
it's up to you, people.
It's up to you. But as always, thank you so much for tuning in to the Wake Church podcast. We pray that this episode has been helpful, beneficial, and ultimately caused you to be a disciple who makes disciples and grow in your relationship with Christ. We love you guys so much, and we can't wait to see you on the next episode of Beyond the Message. Y'all be safe.
See ya.